navigating freelance finances is like mastering a complex game. You're the taxman's point person, responsible for self-employment tax. Insurance? Tailor-made. Income? A roller coaster. So how to win at this game? First, treat freelancing as a business. Create a business identity for tax perks and consider a line of credit for lean times. Use platforms like Fiverr to test market demand for your skills. Cash flow is king. Keep an eagle eye on it. Leverage financial apps for bookkeeping, freeing you to focus on your craft. Consult a financial advisor for retirement planning. No pension plans in the gig economy. And set aside 25 to 28% of your income for taxes. It's not just good practice. It's financial mastery for the modern freelancer. Steve, you not only took the entrepreneurial leap yourself, but you help others at the Podcast Editor Academy. Can you share some of the financial tips that have helped you to successfully transition into full-time podcast editing?
Well, definitely bringing my past experiences with taxes and budgeting. Budgeting has been a big factor in my life since 2003. Just a couple of years after my wife and I got married, we did a personal budget. And then that just kind of evolved into when the gig economy stuff came into our finances as a bigger piece of our income. The budgeting piece, the accounting piece can be very simple for many people. Keeping track of your expenses, and then your income needs to be in a separate place from personal finances. That just helps with the accounting piece immensely. You could be a solo, what do you call it? A DBA, doing business as. You don't have to get an LLC right away to do a small amount of gig work like that. But when you do grow, now you got to talk about organizing yourself or your business into an LLC, an S Corp, a C Corp, things like that. And that affects taxation. Now we're going to a whole level of knowledge about taxes and stuff like that. So in the Podcast Editor Academy, I teach people the basics of that, but then we're also driving people to the experts because we don't want to step out of our bounds as far as what we're expertise in. I can probably tell people what to do and it would be wrong. So there's a lot of good information out there, though. That's the beauty of this world today with the digital mediums that we have, podcasts and YouTube, to learn things, so that it seems really complicated. It seems really hard when you're talking about the scary pieces of the finances of a business, but it really can be manageable, especially if you start out slow. Like Andy, you were talking about testing out something on Fiverr. You're probably not going to make a lot of money starting out on Fiverr, but once you do start, and then maybe you take yourself away and you've got your own business, you got your URL, your website on the internet, and you start getting clients directly that are going to work with you, at least in the type of work that I do, then having your finances separate from business or separate from personal, keeping track of all those expenses, and then educating yourself more on those things that you need at the time. It's kind of like learning when you need it, but don't be too late learning what you need to be able to not make huge mistakes with your finances. Taxes is usually the big one right there.
Lindsay, in your research of gig workers, what have you found when it comes to retirement planning and things beyond driving a car?
It almost never comes up, to be honest. The majority of people are really just focused on sort of meeting their day-to-day expenses, or it can be day-to-day expenses. I would say it's the majority of people. I'd say at least 70 to 80%. Then there's a smaller amount who are on the platform who are saving for a specific goal. Maybe they're trying to help their daughter open up a small business. I remember there was one man whose home was wiped away by a hurricane down south. And so it actually temporarily moved up north to a bigger city to work really aggressively to save money to rebuild their home. But for the most part, I don't hear anyone talking about, I'm saving this much for taxes, I'm putting this much money aside for maintenance. It's a very much money comes in and money comes out. And I think you tend to see that for a lot of people that are doing jobs that are sort of on like the lower end of the income spectrum. There's a lot more around sort of the day-to-day necessities around doing the work. And I've studied ride hailing now in 8 different countries, a lot of them in the global south. And they're literally driving to put petrol in the car. So before you even pick up someone, they're going to call and they're going to say, are you paying me with credit card or are you paying me with cash? Because I need cash to put petrol in my car to keep on working today.
Sergio, how have policy changes in California impacted the financial freedom of gig workers?
Yeah, before I talk about that, I mean, I agree with all the panelists actually that what's lacking in the gig worker community in general is education. And we try to do that on Show Me the Money quite a bit. In fact, we talk a lot about some drivers don't even know what their cost per miles are, meaning, variable cost, fixed cost, forget about retirement, forget about 401k, forget about saving money, for a rainy day fund. Like Lindsay said, most of them are day to day. They have a daily goal. When they hit that goal, they go home. But then there's one thing I agree with both CEOs of Uber and Lyft, and which we interviewed on our channel, is that they said, you have to run this as your small business. And that's probably the only thing I agree with these CEOs, that is true. And that's not being done. And unfortunately, these gig companies do not educate their drivers. So there is a opening there for us. And that's what we're trying to do. We run actually educational segments each week talking about their costs. Some people don't even know how to put spreadsheets together to figure out cost per mile, because if you don't know you're driving your vehicle. If you don't know what your cost per mile is, and everybody's is different, because if you're driving a 10-year-old car, it's very different than a brand new car. If you don't know how to do that, how do you know the offer you're getting from Uber and Lyft is a profitable one for you? You have no idea. So those are very popular with us when we do it. The other thing is, retirement, obviously, most people don't have the money to put away for retirement doing gig work, because it is what it is these days. As far as regulation, as far as California is concerned, we're kind of the oddball out. As we know, about 4 years ago, AB 5 passed, which these gig companies, obviously, notoriously spending $250 million of their own money, came back with something called Proposition 22. And we're all stuck with Prop 22 now. Now, the Prop 22, is written in a way that is really, really not conducive to success for the gig worker. Because in our world, there's an 80-20 rule. 80-20 rule meaning 80% of the drivers are absolutely part-time, and 20% are full-time, and 20% are actually doing 80% of the trips, and 80% part-timers are doing 20% of the trips. And that 20% is being abused without a question. But they have to do what they have to do because they have no other means of maybe employment. And I understand everybody does this for a different reason. But the regulation that came down nullifying the effects of AB 5, which is called Prop 22, is not something that I'm too proud of. Obviously, there has been some legal issues with it. Now it's up to debate in the California Supreme Court. Hopefully it's going to be called unconstitutional. We'll see what happens, and then we can restart again. But, as far as legislation, by the way, Uber and Lyft are hard at work passing or trying to pass clones of Prop 22 in Massachusetts and in New Jersey and in Connecticut. And they know that system works. And in all of this, the gig worker is getting totally I'm not going to say abused, but exploited to a point, specifically with the new algorithms that they're running, which we may speak a little later. But I couldn't agree with the panel more. Education is completely lacking, and these companies somehow neglect it. They don't talk about it. They say, yeah, you run your small business, but what does it take to run a small business as a rideshare driver? And that's what we're trying to do, and we're trying to fill that void.
I just want to double click on something Sergio said that was really important. It's about the 80-20 rule. It's that, yes, there are people on these apps who are saving money for like their next vacation into Hawaii. And it's truly discretionary income. But the majority of work that's done on the platform, like on average, the driver that's going to take you because you need to go to the airport or your sister's house or whatever, are from those 20% of drivers who are like full-time economically dependent on the platform and are doing the majority of work. And so I think that's why you get a lot of these complex narratives around the gig economy, that less you can tell a story about people are on here earning truly discretionary income. And that's true. And I think if you sort of just believe that story, then you're less wanting to sort of put these tight these regulations around the ride-hailing companies or any of these gig economy companies, because you think it's truly discretionary income. And that is true for a portion of the drivers. But really the workhorse of who's getting this work done are people who are dependent on that work. So that's that 20% of people who are doing like 80% of the volume of the work. So I just want to just add that, because Sergio just made a really great comment about all these narratives we see around gig work. They're all true, and in some ways they're holding multiple sort of narratives at the same time.